Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to hear my book talk about my collection of essays, Hear Me, Ohio. I want to explain a little bit about my connection to Ohio as well as my first book, because that will help this thing make sense. And then I'm going to read a little bit from this book and discuss what I think is probably my favorite essay in the whole book. So many of you will recognize my last name, Hirt, as being a person who is affiliated with Hirt's Greenhouse, formerly from Strongsville, Ohio, now called Hirt's Gardens. We are a big family business, gardening business, horticulture, that sort of thing. And I know a lot of you are familiar with my family and extended family and have probably had been to the large greenhouses in Strongsville and may have even been out to the new location, which is not that new anymore. The current location, Hirt's Gardens out in Akron. So I do not live in Ohio anymore. I live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, because I teach at Penn State Harrisburg, where I'm an English professor. I've been over here in Pennsylvania for about 13 years, and I was in Idaho and Iowa before that. So I really left Ohio when I graduated from college. I went to Hiram College, and I've been out and about ever since. So that's my connection, Jen Hirt from Hirt's Greenhouse in Strongsville, Ohio. My first book, Under Glass, The Girl with 1,000 Christmas Trees, is a memoir about growing up in that greenhouse business. It's a memoir about a tumultuous few years in the life of the business and in the life of the family. I also do a lot of research into greenhouses and the history of greenhouses, and I explore some of the metaphors and struggles about what it means to grow plants under glass and to be a family that is also a business under glass. And so that's the first book. And then this next book that I'll be talking about today, Hear Me, Ohio, picks up a lot of the themes of the natural world and growing plants and being part of that. But it looks back on Ohio from all these other places where I have lived. So Iowa, Idaho for grad school, Kentucky, where I did a writer in residence a couple months at Bernheim Arboretum, just sort of like wandering around the Arboretum writing about things, which was amazing. And then really making my home in central Pennsylvania for the last 13 years and kind of writing about that. So the book is me saying, like, listen to me, Ohio. Like, I'm thankful for all that you gave me. And I'm thankful for the vantage points I have now looking back on this whole thing. You might recognize the title Hear Me, Ohio as a lyric from a song by Damian Gerardo. I'm grateful that his management gave me permission to kind of use that lyric and to quote some of the lyrics throughout the piece. So if you're a fan of Hirt's Gardens, Hirt's Greenhouse, and you're a fan of Damian Gerardo, you should buy this book because it's got lots of good connections there. So the essay I want to read and discuss and talk about has to do with a little bit of true crime detective work here in this collection of nonfiction. I am not a true crime writer at all, but there's this fascinating bit of Hirt family history that has to do with a home invasion, with a holdup, with a robbery, and all of it sort of came together to motivate my great-grandparents to leave Cleveland and to go to Strongsville, where they wanted to get away from the crime and start a new business, which became Hirt's Greenhouse, which I eventually wrote about. So the essay is called Not Less Than 1,000 Bottles for Horseradish. And the impetus for this is that one day in an email, my dad received an email from a total stranger, and the stranger had a photo of a bottle of horseradish that was from my great-grandparents' business. It was empty, not like 100-year-old horseradish. It was an empty bottle of horseradish. And it was just an email, and it was just a photo, and this whole mystery sort of erupted. Because while we knew that Sam and Anna Hirt had grown horseradish, none of us living had ever seen the bottle. And the bottle led me, as a writer and a researcher, to an even more amazing story. So let me talk about this. Let me read this essay and talk about this little strange part of Cleveland history and family history as well. So, my great-grandfather starts the morning of December 25th, 1913, with a gun to his head. He wakes to a noise downstairs in his home on East 40th Street in Cleveland, Ohio. His wife wakes too, but there is no rousing their young children, among them my 2-year-old grandfather. Sam Hirt investigates. He is a small Austrian-American, a less than observant Jew with very round eyes and a country of frown under a mustache so wide he looks to be all mouth, like an old baby bird with its beak shut. His forehead glows a half moon under a hairline receding at a rect angle. Because he and Anna were well off, they have at their staircase a button for a downstairs light. This is a convenience that most homes will not have for another half-decade. The light reveals a masked man who levels at him a revolver. I won't know any of this until 100 years later, until 2013. And I hear the news not through a family story or a long-lost relative, but from the front page of a newspaper. 2 weeks before I discover this front page and the news of the robbery, my dad sends me a surprising email. From the subject, horseradish, I can half guess that it is about Sam Hirt, who started the family's greenhouse business, still thriving today by growing and selling horseradish. Hirt's greenhouse used to be called Hirt's horseradish, my relatives would say when I asked them for a family story. That single sentence was always the whole story. So my imagination started and stopped with a wooden cart piled with snaggly white roots. The email message is a foreword, the original sender a stranger. He has attached a photo of a small glass bottle with a crusty cork and a red and green label. Hirt's celebrated horseradish, it reads in a flourish of script descended from snake oils and hair tonics. I've never seen one before, despite 4 generations of a greenhouse family, despite standing in the greenhouse Sam Hirt built, despite writing a whole memoir with the greenhouse at its center, despite how the bottle should have been an heirloom in a box in an attic. I lean forward to this JPEG Rosetta Stone of clues, the peculiar full name of the business. Why was his horseradish celebrated? And below that, there is a phrase. It says, put up by Samuel Hirt, New Sheriff Street Market, Cleveland, Ohio. And that's the precise location of his vendor stall. Below that, phone numbers so old they are undialable. In the attic of the internet, I quickly set myself to working through search strings involving the new clues, every variation and spelling of celebrated, horseradish, Hirt, and New Sheriff Street. And then, there it is. It's the top story on the front page of the Cleveland Plain Dealer, December 26, 1913. The headline reads, Wheeled gun on man gets $739. Masked robbers force citizen to march downstairs in night attire. By the way, that's a really long headline. I don't think the Cleveland Plain Dealer does that headline does long headlines like that anymore. Are they even around anymore? I love that headline, and I loved stumbling across it in a digitized newspaper from 1913. It was absolutely amazing. And as a writer, I'm a big researcher. When you come across things like that, it's so energizing. It's so exciting because you're like, oh my God, now here's part of the story that no one ever knew existed, and I get to be the one to write about it. The article from the Plain Dealer in 1913 sort of narrates this robbery, where these robbers have cased the house. They know that Sam Hirt has $739 in his safe. That's about $16,000 today, maybe a little more. And they have their guns, and they're going to steal the money. They're going to possibly murder him. Whole lot of things would have changed if they had actually gone through with that. While also tracking down that weird piece of history, I then had the other problem of who's this guy who found the Hirt's horseradish bottle And why is he sending this email to my dad? Like, what is going on here? So let me read this one part of the essay where I kind of try to track down the origin of the bottle. The guy who found the bottle, I'll call him Gary, has included his contact information in his email. So my dad and my brother have a meeting betwixt themselves to strategize over how to procure the Hirt celebrated horseradish bottle. If Gary wants money, they will pay no more than $250, which my dad determines is the high-end price for similar bottles on eBay. My dad emails and calls. He makes it clear that he's prepared to make an offer. He does it a second time. There's only silence. I ask him what he thinks Gary is doing with the bottle. Dad thinks Gary might be contacting all the Hirts in the world and seeing who makes the best offer. And there is worry that a distant relative who has the last name but no greenhouse connection will bid high, and we will never actually get the bottle. So then I kind of get involved in the whole situation with the Hirt celebrated bottle. And I decided to call this guy. I called this guy Gary. I emailed him ahead of time. I said, hey, I want to talk to you about this bottle. I told him who I was. And I said, can we talk about this? Can you tell me about the bottle and what's going on here? And so this is the part of the essay that is about that phone call. I want the bottle. I email Gary and ask if I can interview him on the phone about how he found it. He agrees, but he says, there isn't really much to tell you about it. The story is that Gary, with a day job in information technology, had a chance to buy a rundown caretaker's house at the old Jewish cemetery in Cleveland. He had already flipped 3 houses, but this one he wanted to keep for himself. He hired a couple of drunks, in his words, to gut the house. In the crawl space between the top floor and the attic, they found 2 bottles, because what else are drunks supposed to find? And they showed the bottles to Gary. One was old but nondescript. Gary handed it right back to his workers. And the other was Hirt's celebrated horseradish. It was, he said, the first time he had found anything interesting in an old house in Cleveland. He recognized the name because everyone in Northeast Ohio seems to know our family one way or another. The label was still bright and smooth and had not known any sun for who knows how long. He took 2 photos. And that night he typed Hirt's celebrated horseradish into a search engine. And the first link was the Hirt's Wikipedia page that I maintain, where I had written the phrase Hirt's horseradish years ago. He tells me that the bottle is in a dark cabinet, safe from the light that will ruin the label. Our conversation falls silent as we reach the part where he should offer to sell, or I should offer to buy, or he should just give the bottle back to the family. Neither of us says anything. He's been a little difficult to talk to. I've had to rephrase my questions to get details out of him, and more than once his tone has tripped into either impatience or annoyance. I haven't told him anything about the Robbery article and the full history of Hirt's celebrated horseradish. So I say to him, what's your favorite thing about the bottle? I promise that this is the last question. Gary pauses. I know he's turning that bottle in his hand, considering it. I close my eyes. I could cry. I hold my breath instead. Well, he says, it's that phrase below the name, put up by. You just don't see that anymore. With the name, put up by Samuel Hirt. He's right. That's the best part of the bottle. He's a computer programmer dealing all day with the anonymous horrors of tech language on the internet. These 5 personalized words on antique glass stand out. I want to say to him, imagine how that would look if Samuel Hirt happened to be your great-grandfather. But I don't. And I think about the $3 million worth of plants in plastic containers my family sells every year. None of it with anyone's full name. And I think about how my dad will sell vast amounts of something maybe ridiculous this week, such as thousands of dollars of live ladybugs. But he can't get a hold of this one bottle with his grandfather's name on it. I hang up without asking for it. So the essay continues from there as we continue trying to get the bottle and trying to track down exactly what happened in December of 1913 and the following months, having to do with the robbery of Sam and Anna Hirt and the fallout it had on the family. So that's the opening essay in Hear Me, Ohio. And I think that it's sort of, the book sort of continues on with a certain level of tension and emotion and searching for answers. Sometimes about family, sometimes about the strange things that are happening right outside your door. Sometimes about the environment and what are we doing to the environment. And what are our connections with the plants and the animals out there. So I'll end with one of my favorite quotes, which actually starts the book. It's just a really short one little sentence here. It says, it's from Lauren Isley, who wrote The Immense Journey. Lauren Isley was a science writer. And he said, I can at best report only from my own wilderness. And I love that line. I can at best report only from my own wilderness. So Hear Me, Ohio is my attempt to report from my own wilderness. And I hope that you might consider reading it and thinking about your wilderness and how we report on our families and our environments around us. Thank you for listening.